The global commercial aviation industry was dominated by a relatively predictable structure. Airlines around the world depended heavily on aircraft manufactured by two giants, Boeing and Airbus. From narrow-body passenger jets to long-haul wide-body aircraft, these two companies shaped most of modern commercial aviation. Airlines built fleets around their aircraft ecosystems, maintenance systems, spare parts networks, pilot training structures, and financing models. And because global aviation became deeply interconnected over decades, many countries gradually reduced domestic commercial aircraft manufacturing ambitions in favor of international cooperation and Western aerospace supply chains. But over the last several years, the global aviation landscape has started changing in ways many analysts did not fully expect. Geopolitical tensions, sanctions, supply chain disruptions, and increasing concerns about technological independence pushed several countries to rethink how dependent they had become on foreign aerospace systems. And perhaps nowhere has this shift become more visible than in Russia's renewed effort to rebuild large-scale domestic commercial aircraft production. At the center of this effort stands one aircraft that many people once considered a product of another era, the Tupolev Tu-214. At first glance, the Tu-214 may not look revolutionary compared to the newest Western commercial jets. It is based on Soviet-era aviation foundations and has existed for years in limited production. But recently, the aircraft returned to the center of Russia's aviation strategy in a surprisingly major way. Reports of large-scale production plans and fleet orders immediately attracted international attention because they suggested something much larger than simply reviving an older aircraft. They revealed Russia's broader attempt to restore domestic aviation independence under extraordinary geopolitical pressure. And that is exactly why many analysts began saying the growing Tu-214 production strategy was bigger than Boeing expected.
To understand why the Tu-214 suddenly became so important again, we first need to understand how modern commercial aviation actually operates behind the scenes.
Commercial aircraft are not just machines airlines purchase once and operate independently forever. Modern aviation depends on massive international support systems involving spare parts, software updates, maintenance programs, engine support, avionics, certification networks, leasing structures, and long-term technical cooperation. Aircraft manufacturers maintain enormous global ecosystems that support fleets throughout decades of operation. For countries heavily integrated into global aviation systems, this structure worked efficiently for many years. But geopolitical instability exposed a major vulnerability. Dependence on foreign aerospace supply chains could suddenly become a strategic problem. Russia faced this challenge directly after sanctions and international restrictions complicated access to Western aircraft support systems. Airlines operating large numbers of Boeing and Airbus aircraft suddenly faced uncertainty regarding spare parts availability, maintenance logistics, technical updates, and long-term fleet sustainability. This forced Russia to accelerate domestic aviation alternatives much faster than many analysts previously expected. And that is where the Tu-214 returned to relevance. Originally developed as part of the Tupolev Tu-214 family, the Tu-214 was designed as a medium-range, narrow-body passenger aircraft. While it never achieved large-scale global commercial success comparable to Boeing or Airbus models, the aircraft remained operational in specialized roles within Russia and certain government sectors. What changed recently was not the aircraft itself, but the strategic environment surrounding it. Russia suddenly needed domestically supported aircraft capable of helping stabilize portions of its aviation sector, while newer programs such as the Irkut MC-21 continued development and localization efforts. The Tu-214 therefore became part of a broader transition strategy. And then came the production discussions. Russian officials and aerospace industry reports began outlining plans for significantly increased Tu-214 manufacturing. Production targets discussed over recent years suggested dozens of aircraft that eventually be built to support domestic airline operations and reduce reliance on foreign fleets. Even though actual production ramp-up remains technically challenging, the scale of the ambition itself attracted major attention across the aviation industry. Because rebuilding commercial aircraft production is extraordinarily difficult, modern aircraft manufacturing requires highly specialized supply chains, precision engineering, advanced avionics, certified components, skilled labor, engine production capability, and massive industrial coordination. Scaling production is not simply about assembling airplanes. It involves maintaining long-term industrial ecosystems capable of supporting airlines safely and efficiently for decades. This is one reason many analysts were surprised by how aggressively Russia discussed expanding domestic aircraft programs despite major economic and technological pressure. The Tu-214's importance also reflects a larger aviation reality often overlooked by the public.
Airlines prioritize operational continuity above almost everything else. Even if newer aircraft exist, airlines still need aircraft they can reliably operate, maintain, and support under current conditions.
In that sense, the Tu-214 became less about competing directly with the newest Western aircraft technologically, and more about ensuring domestic aviation resilience. Still, comparisons with Boeing naturally emerged. For decades, Boeing dominated large portions of the global narrow-body and medium-range aviation market through aircraft families like the Boeing 737. Russian airlines, like many others around the world, integrated Boeing aircraft heavily into their fleets because of reliability, efficiency, international support systems, and operational familiarity. But the geopolitical environment fundamentally changed those assumptions. As Russia accelerated domestic aircraft planning, some analysts argued Boeing may not have expected such a strong push toward rebuilding large-scale local production capacity so rapidly. Even if the Tu-214 does not directly rival the latest Western narrow-body aircraft technologically, the strategic shift itself matters enormously, because aviation is not only about efficiency anymore. It is increasingly about industrial independence, supply chain control, and geopolitical resilience. Another reason the Tu-214 discussions became important is because they reveal how difficult replacing global aviation ecosystems actually is. Aircraft alone are not enough. A successful aviation industry also requires engines, avionics, maintenance infrastructure, pilot training systems, spare parts production, certification capability, financing structures, airport compatibility, and long-term reliability support. Building this ecosystem domestically is one of the most complex industrial challenges any country can attempt. This is why some analysts remain cautious about how quickly large-scale Tu-214 production can realistically expand. Manufacturing capacity, supply chain adaptation, component localization, workforce training, and industrial modernization all require time and investment. Engines represent another critical challenge. Modern aviation engines are among the most technologically advanced systems ever built. Domestic engine production and certification become essential for maintaining long-term independence in commercial aviation programs. At the same time, Russia's broader aerospace strategy does not depend entirely on the Tu-214 alone. Aircraft programs like the MC-21 and SJ-100 are also part of long-term efforts to modernize domestic aviation capability with more advanced technologies and localized systems. In many ways, the Tu-214 functions as both a practical short-term solution and a symbolic industrial statement. It demonstrates that Russia intends to maintain an independent commercial aviation sector even under difficult external conditions. And perhaps that is what surprised many global observers most. The expectation in much of the international aviation industry was that rebuilding domestic large-scale aircraft production under sanctions and supply chain restrictions would be extremely difficult and slow. Yet Russia continued pushing aggressively toward restoring portions of its aviation manufacturing ecosystem despite those challenges. Of course, major obstacles remain. Scaling production consistently, achieving modern efficiency standards, maintaining airline confidence, and supporting fleets over decades will require enormous effort. Airlines ultimately care about operational economics, reliability, maintenance costs, passenger comfort, and long-term support stability. The Tu-214 will therefore face practical realities beyond political announcements alone. Still, the aircraft's renewed importance highlights something much larger happening across global aerospace today. Countries are increasingly realizing that aviation is not just a transportation industry. It is also a strategic industrial capability tied closely to technology, economics, logistics, and national resilience. The era of complete dependence on globally integrated aerospace supply chains may gradually be giving way to a more fragmented and strategically competitive aviation landscape. And in that changing environment, even older aircraft programs can suddenly become highly important again when they serve larger strategic goals. That is why the Tu-214 story matters far beyond one airplane. It represents a major shift in how countries think about aviation independence in a world where geopolitical stability can no longer be taken for granted. Because sometimes, the biggest aviation stories are not about the newest aircraft designs, but about which countries can still build and sustain their own aviation systems when global conditions suddenly change. If you enjoyed this deep and research-based aviation documentary, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think domestic aviation independence will become more important in the future, or will global aerospace cooperation eventually return to its previous model? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more high-value aviation content exploring the real strategies shaping the future of aerospace.